also originally had four alum that were going to come and speak tonight, but unfortunately one of them is sick. But we still have three, which will be more than enough. It'll just give us a little more time for question and answer after. I think I could probably stand up here and talk for a little bit longer, but nobody really wants to hear me. So first we're going to have Mark Bell, who is a graduate, and he came to Sudbury Valley very early, 1968, and he can probably fill you in on the rest of that from there. So Mark, all right, it's all yours.
Thanks, Paul. It's great to be here tonight. I am a graduate of Sudbury Valley School, class of 1971, and I consider myself an extremely lucky middle-aged man. When I came to the school, it was from a public school previously, and my folks had played a great role in my education up to the time I was 15 years old when Sudbury Valley School opened. My folks were well-read, had a house, something like a small version of Sudbury Valley, a rambling old house that my dad was always working on, building a chimney, putting on an addition, loading up the station wagon and taking us cross-country to see the sights of America, reading books, building a fire, lots of chores, lots of discipline within our house, which I didn't totally appreciate, but since I always saw my mother and father working hard, I got in there and worked myself. And my dad was a small businessman in Wellesley, and still is. In fact, he's having a going out of business sale today, and I just came back from helping him at the shop all day. I was swinging a sledgehammer, so I might have a few chunks of debris in my hair. I was, like I said, an extremely lucky person. I think very lucky in that at a fairly young age, about 12 or 13, something really turned me on in my life. Gets used a lot now. The moment of clarity happened to me. It was show business and it was music. I didn't quite understand what it was about it or how I was going to work into that world of music, but something hit me and set a fire in my heart that I couldn't put out. And every roadblock that was put up in front of me, I chopped up and it built the fire into a rage. My parents didn't know what this music thing was all about. I'd been taking cello lessons for 4 years. All of a sudden I was interested in electric guitars and writing rock and roll songs. It was just a teenage fad type of thing in the 60s, but in my heart I thought it was going to be something more. I came to Sudbury Valley School in 68 and wandered into the art room, and there was some kids younger than me sitting around. One little girl asked me if I could help her draw a horse, so I sat down and drew a little horse. I wandered upstairs and smelled some smoke and stuck my head in a strange-looking room, and there was a really pretty girl, a little bit older than me, talking to a couple guys my age, reading a Life magazine. I said, I don't know what that class is, but I'd like to be involved in that. I walked out of that room, and I walked down the stairs, and I bumped into this little kind of nerdy-looking guy, a little younger than me. He had a camera around one shoulder. He had some kind of a blueprint under his other arm and some rockets in his hand. I said, what are you going to do? He said, I'm going to shoot some rockets off the edge of the campus, take pictures of them as they re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. I said, that sounds interesting. So I went off with him, and he was telling me about trajectories and showing me a little bit about right angles and how things work, and I was interested in shooting some photographs, and I was interested in photography. And I said, what about those blueprints? He said, well, these are schematic drawings of amplifiers. I rebuild ham radios. So I talked to him for a while, and I said, I'm interested in electric guitar. I've heard that there's a way you can do something with an amplifier and make it louder than it's supposed to be. Yes, that's possible. I think I might be able to do that. So I made my acquaintance with this young man. As we were walking back to the school, he said, well, what do you think about Sudbury Valley School? And I said, well, I saw this really interesting girl up in the smoking room. She said, oh, yeah, that's my sister. I can introduce you to her. I was like, I was networking. So things were starting to go well for me. There were musicians, there were artists, there were photographers, there were people interested in politics and the world. In my interest in music, I was interested in everything that involved. The songs that the Beatles or the Stones or whoever were singing, I wanted to know where Morocco was and what Marrakesh was and who recorded the album and where was it recorded and who was the engineer, and and how do you spell the word that rhymes with whatever. And so I was entering the world of everything through my music. Meanwhile, back at home, things were not totally smooth. My dad, who totally believed in the school, did not totally believe in Mark Bell. He thought that maybe I was too lazy. He would ask me every day, well, what did you learn in school today? And I said, well, I was sitting with Clark Chase. He showed me how to play some inversions on the piano, and I was working out some words from the new White album by the Beatles. Yeah, well, did you read anything? And I'd remember some book I'd read. Oh, yeah, I read Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. He said, well, what'd you think of that? Oh, fascinating coming-of-age story. And he said, oh, okay. This he could relate to. So I never lied to my dad, but those little white lies were coming in, He'd ask, oh, yes, history of Western civilization, Winston Churchill. I would come up with these things. One day I came home and there was a sheaf of paper on my place at the table with 75 questions. What was Millard Fillmore's middle name? How do you find the area of a right triangle? So I sat down and tried to work it out because I didn't want to disappoint my old man. And a lot of this information was stuff that I knew because I'd been reading, going to school. And halfway through it, I said, Dad, I have got so much information in my head. I read, we got the TV going on, we travel. I have something going on in my heart right now, and an instinct that I believe in that's telling me a direction to go. I'm trying to channel some of this information, discard some of the things that I don't feel are valid to me at this point, and channel this flood into a canal and put a water wheel on it and use this information, because I'm 15 and a half. In a few years, I'm going to go out there. I want to do something. I want to do it right now. You got to have faith in me. He says, all right, well, what did you do today? I said, well, I went downstairs with Mrs. Perrin and I baked an apple pie. Yeah? And yesterday you played the electric guitar. All right, genius. If you're going to make apple pies and you're going to play that damn electric guitar and you think you're going to go out and make a living doing that, go ahead and do it. Just don't come back to me in 3 years looking for money. I said, okay. So I got through that hurdle with my dad. Now I had to prove to myself, did I know what I was doing? In my time at the school, I spent a lot of time learning from kids younger than me, kids older than me, passing on things that I learned back and forth. But this is where I really turned to the staff of the school. When we were first getting the school going, and still today, as we meet each hurdle, the staff of this school have been incredible guiding lights for me. These people are problem solvers. They're creative thinkers. They're open-minded people. When I would look to the staff, and I knew what the school was going through, still continues to be a rough road and was a rougher road in '68. And I saw the rough road that I was having at home and with my dreams, but I saw what these people were doing against all odds, without great financial gain, but the sparkle in their eye and the energy that they radiated and still do radiate, that's what I wanted to have in my profession. So now jumping ahead, when I left the school 3 years later, I had a tremendous amount of self-esteem. I had a tremendous amount of vision of where I was going. And when a lot of my friends in my town were spending the summer in the sand pit drinking wine and wondering, well, I guess I'm going to college, I'm going to beat the draft, or I'm going to make my dad happy, and I still don't know what I'm going to do, but I think I was already out there with my band, During the day, I was working hard jobs so I could raise the money to get some things that I thought I needed to get my career in gear. And my instincts paid off big time. Things happened, like I say, I'm a lucky guy. I won't make a long story, but I realized every dream I ever had in music. I was able to go on, work with the top people in my field, traveled all over the States, South America, Canada, recorded CDs, tapes, set up publishing deals, still getting royalties from those today. Was able to go on and realize everything I ever wanted from music. I had it's a career. I still get phone call. This afternoon I got a call from a guy in L.A. who wants me to come out after this speech to meet him at Mama Kin. His band is on Warner's, and they're doing their big showcase tonight. And it's great. It's a language, it's a whole society, it's something that has meant a lot to me in my life and still means a lot. When I finished that phase of my career at 35, once again, went back to my Sudbury Valley training. The strength, the conviction. I remember making those pies with Mrs. Pera. I wanted to work for a corporation. I wanted a 401k plan. I wanted medical. I wanted dental. I wanted to have a home. I wanted to get off the road. I wanted to do a lot of things. I talked to a friend of mine from music. I said, "What do you do when you finish music?" He said, "Well, I'm opening a restaurant." I said, "That sounds like a good idea." I asked him, "How do you do it?" He says, "Well, learn how to cook, or else the chef is always going to have the upper hand." So I concocted my own persona, and as somebody in school once told me, he said, "You know what makes a great doctor or a great tattoo artist or a great high school principal or clam digger or whatever is when you get it in your heart, that little thing, that part of the spirit, when you feel that inside, then the lines come naturally. Then you can play the role." That's what makes the difference between a doctor who really is a great doctor and just a doctor that went to school for 20 years and is regurgitating what he learned from a book someplace, to really have it in your heart. That's how I went with my cooking and my chef work, and within a few months I was at the Beverly Hills Hotel running the garde manger at the Polo Lounge. Came back to Boston after a few years, got married, settled down on the South Shore, have a great renovated barn for a house, and my wife. I got married in England. Continued to work in that field for 10 years total at the Boston Harbor Hotel down at Rose Wharf, which was fantastic. I just left that job recently and started working on a children's book that I've done all the photography for. A couple days from now I'll be at the Wareham Public Schools doing a talk for the young kids at a career day, showing them pictures from my book and talking to kids about creative thinking and open-mindedness, and helping my dad now. I just came back from the shop doing that, and on Wednesday I'll be here at the school. I've been visiting the school. I came back to Sudbury Valley School a few months ago just to see how things were going, and was amazed at how fantastic it continues to be. And a lot of your kids have been really interested in some things that I have to offer them. We've got a band playing in the music room. I've got a great coloring group down in the art room, talking to kids about getting their works published, be it artwork, music, helping them write songs. I'd love to show some kids the way in culinary if anybody wants to go in that direction. We are having a pizza sale on Wednesday, but so it's a great thing, and I really feel needed still at the school after all these years, and I've always felt a great family feel whenever I enter this place. And so that's my Sudbury Valley story. I always thought I was we all think we're kind of a unique person, I guess. This is definitely the place to be if you think you're a little unique or want to end up. I feel I've had two great long-term successful careers, and a lot of other, I didn't even tell you about when I went to work for the circus, when I was an ice cream man. It goes on and on. I've done a few things, and it's all it's having the strength and the courage and the having it in your heart. And that's what this place is full of, those kind of people that can really set you on that road. Thank you very much.
Wow, I know Amy's just dying to get up here now. So here's Amy Hyman. She's going to tell us a little bit about herself.
Can everybody see me over here? Well, I came to school when I was little. I was 4 and came in 1971, and I was here for all of my education before college. I was thinking about what I was going to come up here and say and how I was going to explain to all of you what Sudbury Valley was like. Sudbury Valley to me is not what it was like as much as who I am and what it made me, because I think I live my life as Sudbury Valley every single day. I carry it with me all through the years. It's part of my family. It's part of what I do today. I remember playing as a little kid and playing with the big kids and listening to Mark Bell on his drums and watching my brother be influenced by his music and just being part of that and being able to be free and do whatever you wanted to do. I remember one of my first days, and this is really significant to me because this sort of tells me who I am. I went into the art room and Joni was there, and I wanted to draw and I wanted to paint something, and I was sitting there and Joni gave me some paper and she gave me some pens and so forth. And I sat down and I made a big picture of a sun, and it was green. And I liked it. It was green. I said, today the sun's going to be green to me. And I showed it to Joni, and I thought for sure I was going to be told, no, the sun is yellow, the sun is orange. And Joni looked at it and said, if you want to make a green sun, that's wonderful. And I thought that was really special because I was able to do what I wanted to do. I left Sudbury Valley as a 17-year-old, and I was here from 4, kind of not knowing what I was going to do. And I went overseas for a while with a friend. Then I came back and I said, no, I want to try college. This is going to be fun. This is different. There's going to be something called grades. There's going to be something called curriculum that was different than Sudbury Valley. And I went to Northeastern and I got my degree in criminal justice, and I loved it. And it was exhilarating, and it was fun kind of studying and getting a grade and saying, wow, what is this? You know, why are my classmates, you know, skimming pages and trying to get an A? Why aren't they learning? And they were learning, but they were learning their way, and I was learning my way, which was absorb whatever you want, take in everything, take your Sudbury Valley background and enjoy, because education was fun for me. And I thought that was very different. That was something I really enjoyed. And then when I left college, I decided to work in human services, and that's what I've done for the past 6 or 7 years. And I work with children now, and I think what my job today is to give them back what I got at Sudbury Valley as a little kid. And I take a piece of this every day and I share it. And that's my way of sort of seeing what Sudbury Valley was and giving it to people. Because this has been one of the most special places in the world that I've ever experienced. The people here are wonderful, and I'm a part of it. And it's really a neat feeling. And it's, you know, all through the years of growing up, I had questions. Well, what do you study? And well, what did you do all day as a little kid? I played. Little kids play. I teach the little kids I work with as a social worker, let's play. And they become who they are, and they problem solve through their play with their problems, and they learn. And you read books, and then you get older. You turn from that 4-year-old who's playing with another little girl, and you grow, and you start reading, because that's your form of play, and it's all a part of that. It's not a part of, well, I read Catcher in the Rye, and I read, 3 dictionaries today. It's about, what do I want to read? It's a wonderful place, and it's ongoing, and there's so much to it that you can't just sort of sit here and talk about for a very long time, or I can't, because part of it is very selfish. It's a very sacred place to me. But Sudbury Valley is just an ongoing thing for me, and I love this place. Thank you.
Well, and that'll bring us to our last presenter tonight, Laura Poitras, who I understand was in Mark Bell's carpool when you were 4 and Mark was a big kid. Yeah. Come on up. I'm interested to hear that.
Thank you. I mean, it's wonderful, to be here and to maintain connections with the school, and because as Amy was talking about, I mean, it becomes a part of your life in an emotional way, and that doesn't stop. I came to the school when I was 4, when the school first opened, the same year I think you probably did, in '68, but we sort of had different perspectives on it because I was about here, but we were in the same carpool, and what I can sort of recall of the early years is a sense of, both a sense of both a very much a safe place, and also a place of exploration and spending lots of time with friends, just in different parts, and I remember, and I somehow think of the school in that time as sort of these places like the beech tree, or the rocks, or the building, or certain rooms, or certain nooks, or these things that I think the kids sort of create a kind of a culture and sort of discover things in the school that I think is very private and individualized, and I think we all did that differently, forged different kinds of paths here, and yesterday I came back. I live in New York City right now, and I came back, and there is this, odd moment of realizing that this is a place of, tremendous memories, and then, how actually can you relate to it, as coming back, and also thinking of how I could talk about it and talk about the experience, because I think even as somebody who's themselves been educated in this way, just how do you kind of articulate it for somebody who, perhaps parents who sort of step into the school and somehow, it's hard to understand what's going on, and so, in the position of both, having experienced it and then also feeling, stepping into it, like also that's a very difficult thing because it's a different group of kids, and you can't sort of re-enter that. I came here when I was 4 with my 2 other sisters, and I attended, this was my, only sort of educational experience until college. I was here from when I was 4 until I was 17, and some of, I remember, there are these different, I think stages that I, think of when I think of being here. I think very much of being a child and being with friends and playing, as Amy was talking about. And then there are also times of thinking that were very solitary for me personally, where I took a lot of time to myself and did my own, sort of tried to work through my own sort of struggles. And I think that although, it's important to say that although that it's, it was wonderful to be here, that there are also certain struggles that all kids go through, in any, always, but also being in this environment. And so there was certainly times where I felt like that it was also a place where, I could contemplate things, and I did that in different ways. I did it in the art room a lot with Joan, and spent a lot of time, blocks of days and days and days, doing artwork and thinking and contemplating. And I spent a lot of time when I was older reading, sort of just alone, just, following my interest, there are, I think of, the sorts of ways that you learn to, I think understand yourself and learn your sort of own learning process at the school. And that, I think about, somehow the complicated ways that you learn to sort of put together information and what, the kind of process that you go through. So, for instance, how do you sort of figure out the world, or how do you figure out, for me, I learned to read late, so there was questions of, how did I figure that out, and what are the sort of, I don't know, the issues that came around that, so, and, when I decided, I left the school. I graduated when I was 17, and I pretty much decided that I didn't want to go directly into college or anything like that. That I wanted to pursue, some of different interests and actually start a sort of a career. And I had always done cooking, and I began. I did a year of training in cooking and began apprenticing at a French restaurant in Boston, and pursued a career as a chef for six or 7 years, and did that throughout my early 20s. And I started in Boston and then moved to San Francisco and continued it there. And then there was some point in San Francisco where I think I reached a point where I didn't want to, that the sort of time commitment that it required, and I realized that I didn't want to sort of do that for the rest of my life, and began to part-time go back to school, and I attended the San Francisco Art Institute and studied filmmaking, and did that part-time while I was cooking for a while, and then at some point left cooking and began working for a nonprofit media arts organization in San Francisco, and I worked there for 4 years, and I did technical aspects of projection and film, and also did curating and research, and became very involved, and was also interested in doing my own work at that point, and realized, and I had accumulated some credit, but I hadn't finished my undergraduate, and decided that I wanted to go back and do that, and applied to schools, and decided that I wanted to do I wanted to pursue my interest in film and media, but do it somewhat. I didn't want to do it in art school context, and came to New York City, applied to the school, the New School for Social Research, and began studying there in sociology, and also with an emphasis on doing communications type work, and also media and film, and finished my undergraduate, and I'm currently working towards my MA. I'll finish my MA in February in media studies, and that's, I guess, some sort of like a narrative, of some of the things that I did, but when I think about the school and what it meant for me and being here, the things that I really think of are a sense of connection with people, and particularly when I think of the support that I received from staff, and how wonderful and important that was to my life, and continues to be to this day, and what a special place it is in that sense. I mean, to give people that sort of love, and so yeah, I guess maybe we can take questions. And I also feel, coming here, that I can only say so much, but that it's also about what your questions are, and your concerns are, your interests are, and that is actually and also how we all experience the school differently, and how that all sort of comes together to kind of, create an understanding of what goes on here. So please, bring your questions.
Okay, so we're at the question and answer portion of our program. Remember to please come up and use the microphones, and I guess you can either direct the question to somebody if you wish, or they can team up and give you a gang answer if you'd like. Whatever you think is best. But come on up and don't knock each other over to get there.
I'm going to ask the standard question you may get a lot. When you went on to college, were you finding that you were deficit in some skills, algebra, or some of the curriculum that they do put you through in more normal high schools? Anyone? Yeah.
I'll answer my feelings on that. I think as all people, everybody has their own deficits, and it's your will to want to go forward and do what you want to do. When I went to college, I think the last math class I took at Sudbury Valley, I was 6 years old, and I didn't want to do it. Wasn't interested in it, didn't feel like doing it at the time. And then I left Sudbury Valley, in a couple years I traveled, and I learned to use math by counting the money that I was spending traveling, and a train ticket here and a plane ticket here and food here, and am I going to survive here? And it kind of became an interesting thing, mathematics. Then I came back and I wanted to go to college, and I said, well, seeing as though I came back from overseas with a quarter in my pocket, I'm going to learn math. And I went to Northeastern, and there it was, my first quarter there. They were on a quarter system, not a semester. I saw this thing, and it said, mathematics. Take this course, you have to. And I walked right up to my professor, and I said, look, this has been my education. I don't know math, but if you give me the books and you show me what I need to do to pass this class, because this guy over here called the dean's telling me I need to do it, I'll do it. She gave me a few extra books. I taught myself algebra, which I didn't know what it was. Passed the class, and I went on. So, yes, everybody has deficits. You make up for it. You do what you want to do, and your own desires to wanting to go forward, you do it. It's more about not having to do it. It's wanting to do it.
In response, I think, there's some interesting things that happen, I think, on one hand, I think we come out of the experience of the school with certain kinds of strengths, like a certain being able to pursue, sort of like, well, give me a few books, I can figure this out. And then there are also, you have maybe a sense that maybe you don't know enough, and I think that what, from my experience, is that you end up by overcompensating and actually do very well, that you think, oh, well, maybe I didn't learn this a certain way, and then there's a certain, internal pressure that you put on yourself. So I find, and I haven't had any problems in any of my education. I mean, I've done really well. So there hasn't been, that hasn't been an issue for me.
Thank you for your presentations. I thought they were great. In traditional education, most parents, parents trust the schools to teach their kids, or they don't have much choice about that. They allow that to happen, and they, for the most part, ask their kids what they're learning. Did you find, because the circumstances were so different, that your parents were allies in your learning, and did you turn to them with the same kind of trust that you did? Obviously this is different for everyone. Same kind of trust that you felt for the staff here. Did you expect, or did you get that kind of response from your parents also as sources of information, and could you weave them into your educational experience?
In my experience, certainly the parents and your family, how you come up, is of the utmost importance. It really, I won't go into that. You all know that. You all have kids. What was interesting for me was the staff at Sudbury Valley, I think, were some of the first grown-ups that I ever dealt with in my life in a real way. At home, I was the oldest son, playing a role to a point as the oldest son. I'd tease my younger sister a little bit. I'd get a certain amount of more chores than my younger brothers. My father and my mother were on some kind of a pedestal to me, and I dealt with them in a certain way, and they to me. We all played our family roles, and so did grandmother and the aunts and uncles. In the public school, more game playing, role playing, the teachers under their constrictions to do what their boss was telling them and keeping their disciplinary thing with us kids. At Sudbury Valley, I think it was the first time I ever dealt with people, grown-up people, the way you do when you get out of school, which is when you go and ask the boss for a job or deal with people in a real way. Certainly, Mrs. Para, our great cooking teacher who got me started with culinary, was the first older person that I ever dealt in a real way. And in a real way, she was a real salty old lady and great, and it opened my eyes because, well, it continues today. You get the generation gap, and you get kids with a certain way of looking at the older grown-ups. A lot of that gets broken down in this school that you don't find in the home or in the church or in any other institution that I've ever been. So even though the home is number one, Sudbury Valley School's right there too. And they do interweave in a beautiful way.
Yeah, I think it's an important question, and I think it's important for parents, because I think that it is. I mean, we have to say that it's different. I mean, the school does things differently, and it has different ideas about how education works than what is, I guess you'd say, the norm. And so, how kids are going to be there is definitely going to be influenced by how how it's handled at home, and how kids are able to deal with that. And I think. In my experience, there was a sort of a concern at some points, like, oh, well, maybe they're not, maybe she's not, learning the right things, or maybe. And so the concern, I think, it can be difficult, I think, for kids, because then they can sort of internalize it, maybe, well, they should, that they're not learning the right things, and I think it's very important in terms of, creating, being very, in a sense, supportive of the learning that goes on, and the the way that kids learn. But my parents, I'm not saying that they were, entirely. I mean, they also sent us here. They also obviously were supportive of what the school was doing. So.
Gee. Well, for me, it was a little bit different. I grew up with my brother and my mom. My mom was a single parent working a lot. So Sudbury Valley was a great place for my brother and I to be. She knew we were being taken care of and being taught. And that was really comforting to her. So going home, her being the free spirit she wasn't so concerned that our academic needs were getting met, and that we were up to par as far as what our friends were, but that we were getting the nurturance that we needed, that we were getting the emotional support that we needed, that we were learning something. And she, being a free spirit, absorbed all those things, or thought about all of those things. And we would sit around the dinner table and talk about our day, and what did you do, and what did you do. And my brother, a few years older than me, would say to my mother, well, what did you learn today? Because I learned this. And that said it all to her. She didn't need to hear anything more. She didn't have to hear me say, I learned this or I learned that. You learn life.
I want to piggyback on the question that was asked earlier about your preparation for college. But I want to preface this by saying I'm a graduate of a prep school, very regimented. I'm the antithesis of Sudbury Valley School. So having a student, one of my children in the school, is very soul-stretching, to say the least. But what I'm hearing you say is, even though I went to prep school, college, graduate school, and living in America today, education is your ticket. There's no doubt about it. I'm in the high-tech field today, and, well, anyhow, what I hear you saying is you arrived at the same point I did, which is, except for you're in the arts, is you have gone through the college, undergraduate, graduate school track, just as I did. You arrived at the same point, different road than I took. What I'm hearing, however, from recent graduates from Sudbury Valley over the last 2 years is the concept of they come out of Sudbury Valley and they have to do a lot of remedial work. They have to spend a year or two doing catch-up. And I heard you say the same thing, that you, in your case, and I'm sorry I didn't remember your name, you were doing extra work because you felt deficient in some capacity, and you went to your professor and said, I haven't had math since I was in 4th grade or something like that. So my question, a little convoluted here, is how much did you feel you had to do remedial work to do that catching up so that you would be in step with where your class was? And do you think that has become more needed since you graduated? Because that's what I'm hearing from recent graduates.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of object to the term remedial work. I mean, I don't feel like that anything I've done in my life has been remedial work. And I also can say, in comparison to, and it's to other people I've been in school with, I think what I do is take things very seriously and work very hard at what I do. And I do think that is some of the thing that you get from having this experience and not in a sense taking shortcuts. And but I don't feel that I've done that I've, spent my, dealing with, college or graduate school and doing catch-up work. I mean, yeah, it does not.
Yeah, I feel the same way in a lot of this that Laura does as far as remedial. I don't think, for me, education is ongoing, be it academically and so forth. I keep saying the same things, but I feel strongly about this. There wasn't a lot of work I needed to do when I went to college because the want and the desire and the drive to be in school for myself was there. I didn't have a parent telling me to go to college. In fact, my mom sort of said, if you don't want to go, you don't have to. And that was because of financial reasons, because she didn't know that I was going to be able to afford to go, and she couldn't do it. So she kind of said, well, if you don't want to go, don't. But I wanted to go because I wanted to experience it. So as far as remedial work, no. In fact, I was kind of flabbergasted at some of my classmates as to what their educational backgrounds were and some of the things they were talking about and discussing. You learn drive here. You learn the desire to not stop at anything. I went to Northeastern for 5 years. I'm the first person in my family to go to college, and my plan is to go to law school, and I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop because I don't do perfect on my LSATs. I'm going to say, well, I'll take it again, and that's the drive you get here, and the passion to go forward and be yourself and feel good about education and feel like you're somebody. A lot of people who do it just go through the motions, and they're not picking up all the other pieces that go along with it.
I never went to college. My whole education ended with Sudbury Valley School, and I'm not ruling out going to college. There's a good chance I will go someday. Which is kind of funny, except working in the hotels where I come from, I was always amazed at the amount of guys my age who were going back to school because they blew it the first time around. They were keeping step. They went to school because everybody else was, or their girlfriend was, or because their mother or father wanted them to, and they specialized in something, typewriter repair or whatever that doesn't exist anymore, or something that they're not interested in now. I don't know what I'm talking out of my ocean right now. I'm in a different sea, but sometimes people try to keep in step to a point where they make a mistake the first time around, and I see a lot of midlife crises and a lot of educational mistakes and a lot of mistakes made that sometimes I think it's good to take yourself out of the race a little bit and be responsible to yourself and make some decisions right the first time. When I do go to college, if I do go, I'm going to get it right the first time. I'm going to go because I'm going to get my money's worth, and I'm going to go there because I feel that somebody's going to teach me something that I can't find out in a different way better.
About dealing with friends your own age when you were here, and most of the friends in the community you were living in were, a normal public school. Did you find any problems in dealing with them, or did you have a different relationship with the kids that you dealt with here than you did with the kids back in your town that weren't at school here?
That's to anybody? I grew up in an apartment complex, so there were plenty of kids who went to the local public schools near me. So I had my friends here at Sudbury Valley, and I had my friends there. They thought I was a little unique and a little different because I went to this special school. Some people thought it was kind of bizarre. I just thought I was unique and lucky. But we played the same games and we did the same things, and kids didn't talk about academics when you're little. You talked about playing and what you did and what animals you were playing with.
it wasn't an issue for me. I mean, I don't remember that I don't have any, memories that it became. I think it was considered different, and it was, dealt with different ways. Some kids would think, wow, that sounds nice or whatever. But I mean, I don't have any, memories of it being a negative or difficult, thing.
That issue was a little difficult for me, too. That was one of the hard things of making the change to the school was some of my old friends that I thought were pretty free-thinking would come around and say, so Mark, you're at Sudbury Valley School, tell me about it. I'd tell them about it, and they'd say, it sounds great. Boy, that's great. I'm so sick of Holliston High, and they're making us sit in 2 study halls in a row, and then you got to go to the pep rally and cheer for the team, and they lost all year, and I'd rather be in the music room working. I say, yeah, I know, you should come down. They say, yeah, I don't think I'd trust myself in a school like that, though. It just kind of made me feel like, this is a kid I've known all these years, and maybe I don't really know him as well as I thought, and it just hurt a little bit.
This is something I've sort of been wondering. People who aren't familiar with the school or just looking at it from the outside might think, oh, this is great for free spirits, sort of like what you were just touching on. People who are really self-motivated and creative, and you all seem to be that way. Do you think, from your experience, both yourselves and the people you went to school with, those who graduated and those who didn't, do you think that's something that you got from the school or that you took into the school? And the people who might not have stuck around, do you think that's something they were lacking, or they just didn't stick in here long enough to find that, or what do you think about that?
Well, I think as far as being a free spirit, I think that is part of Sudbury Valley. I learned part of that here. I'm very not a free spirit in many things I do. I work for a very conservative agency. I work for the Commonwealth of this state. So there's definitely my conservative side there and my free spirit side there. And while Sudbury Valley isn't for everybody, because for whatever their own choices are, it's because it's their own choices. And there's many wonderful things about Sudbury Valley. That just allows you to be who you are. So as far as being a free spirit originally and coming here, no, I don't think so. I think we're just allowed to be who we are rather than to conform to what is expected or thought.
I think your kids that come at the younger ages are most definitely at an advantage of the kids I've known here at the school. I think it's really tough when you come in at my age or older or, anywhere in the teens, because a certain amount of walls and things have happened in your head. And I mean, when I was standing there talking, you would think that I was maybe always, making connections with agents on the payphone down there and getting ready for my music career. If you saw me, you'd say, you might have thought like my father did. Mark, you look kind of lazy. You're sitting there listening to a Led Zeppelin record talking to some girl. There's a lot of things going on in the old noggin, though, that it's been interesting thinking about what I talked to you tonight about for the last few weeks. It's just this, I think everybody more and more needs to get their own personal crap detector in their head, because we all have this tremendous amount of infomercials and commercials and movies, the biggest hit of the week, and this and that, and you gotta, do I really need to buy that new car? Do I really need to live on that street? Do I really need to spend my money to go to this university versus that one? Everybody has their own personal truths and their own personal crap, and you've got to get that straight in your head. A lot of kids and adults go down the wrong road and waste a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of their life by not being able to get the crap detector turned up to a significant degree. And that, so what I was doing a lot of the time, sitting there talking to people and getting, I think my folks set me on the right road, but from talking to the kids, the parents, the staff, you know, it's amazing the people that come through the school, besides the school meeting and all ourselves. There's always interesting visitors and new information, a kid with a different magazine or something, you know, somebody's father is a dentist, somebody's father is a mortician. You get to hear these things, and you get to get your own personal head on straight. That's what I was doing a lot of the time. It certainly set me up for once I got out of here to make some good, solid moves from the get-go.
I don't think that you. I mean, I wouldn't say that there are particular types of kids, you know, that the school works for, and I think that that the kids make it work for themselves in different ways. And I think that the way that the three of us, I mean, we all had different experiences and talked about it in different ways. And I mean, and we all sort of did something different to have the school work for us in the way that we needed it to work. And so I wouldn't say that only for, you know, particular kinds of self-motivated and I also think that maybe there is something that it does allow you to open up, you know, particular kinds of whatever creativity, or to sort of be more free-spirited or something like that. I mean, that is an opportunity.
I'm curious if any of you have children, and if you do or if you don't and think you might, what your thoughts are, and would you, how should I say it, go out of your way to provide this kind of opportunity for your own children?
Well, I don't have any children other than the children I service in my work, and I think I share Sudbury Valley with them. Yes, I will share Sudbury Valley with my children. And I was just asking Joni about the wait list, so if I plan, I don't have any now, I don't have any plans to have any, so. But they'll come here, absolutely.
Yep, kids for me also falls into my college category. Nothing yet, but there's possibility here. If I had kids, they would definitely come to Sudbury Valley School.
I don't have kids. But my partner, I've talked about it, but it's at this point too early, you know, for me. And yeah, so it's hard to answer that.
I would suggest to, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you. I would suggest to the rest of the audience that there's a filter at work here. People who from your class who do have kids aren't here. They're home with the kids. And it's not that if you go to SVS you don't have kids. But I had a question too. Kind of three pieces. How did it change while you were here? How has it changed since you left? And how would you like to see it change?
Well, it's grown since I was here. I remember when I started, I think there might have been, or when we all sort of started, there might have been 40, 50, 60 kids, and now there's quite a few. It's changed a lot in that regard. Cosmetically, it's changed. How I want to see it change, or the philosophy has changed, I don't think so. I see the same faces and the same drive, and I see these kids running around. And, you know, years ago, we were the little kids, and we used to look to the older kids who had graduated and say, oh, those are the big kids. I remember when we used to watch what they did. And now I was walking down here with Joan, and I said, wow, I'm one of those big kids now. I wonder what these kids are thinking. And they have the same thoughts I did back in 1970. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'd like to not see it change, just maybe expand and get bigger as it has. Just have room for me to come and visit. Send my kids.
I mean, I haven't spent enough time recently to comment on how. I mean, there are certain. I mean, we didn't have computers, and but I mean, I think during the time that I was there, I mean, it's. I mean, it's a tough question, I think, to answer. You know, because you can only sort of see it in the in your own sort of context and sort of how you've changed and. I mean, I do think that being part of the first generation meant something, and I was, and Mark was. I mean, that signifies that a particular kind of a thing, and that then to have kids come in, later, I think had a different experience of the school than maybe the first group of kids did, and I think now that things are really much more established, that the kids coming in now have, again, a different experience than I think, I did in 68. Yeah, I think that it's probably a lot different.
In 68, when I came, if you read the history of the school, there was a tremendous jolt to the system of the school when, since there was no school for any of us to come visit, we all read the little About Sudbury Valley catalog. That was my little Bible that I would read, and had this very simple philosophies, deceptively simple philosophy, actually very complex in its simplicity. Some of the students who came had read one word on that page, and not the whole page, the word freedom, and came here and wanted a free school, damn it. We want to be able to do whatever we please, and we're not answering to anybody. And there came a point after the first few months where we realized that if we didn't do something, the people seeking total freedom without paying for the freedom could jeopardize the school. So the school split in half. A lot of people left to form their own free school someplace, off in a circle in the woods someplace, and be free. The rest of us that stayed, it was a jarring experience. I saw my friends leave, and it was, which school are you going to go with? Are you going to stay here or go to the new school? It was difficult. Out of that, I got incredible strength. I still look back to those times. That's when I looked to the staff, and they were like the Rock of Gibraltar and kept the place going with the even keel. That's when, even though we started off almost going out of existence, we kept afloat. That's when my dad came to the school to see what the heck was going on and walked out and said, this is when he really was sold on the school. The strength, this was the kind of thing my old Yankee small businessman father wanted to see, because this was his kind of people. And so that was my early. Today, coming to the school, the gentleman who's talking about the prep school that he went to, and I've got my brother-in-law went through Rivers, and I come from my grandmother Carolyn was at Wellesley College, the head of the economics department there for years. I was scandalizing the family by not going on to higher education with us, and my grandmother ran the elementary school department up in the Burlington, Vermont schools all her life. Coming back to Sudbury Valley School, it's like, I imagine going back to the hallowed halls of Harvard or Rivers or wherever you came from. It's the same place. It's the same, that simple philosophy still rings true. I walk in the door, I feel totally at home. I see new faces, new kids. You always have that little bit of what is going to be behind this door. When I shocked the generation ahead of me, and now this generation is shocking me with the way they are free and letting their flag fly. But I feel totally at ease with these kids and the new staff, and because the ideas and the those original little things from that little Bible about Sudbury Valley School, still solid as the Rock of Gibraltar. And once you feel it in your heart and feel the spirit of the thing, all the words come easy, and it continues to flow. So I love that about the school. I really feel this institution, it's not a wishy-washy kind of thing that changes. This year we're going to try with uniforms, orange jumpsuits for everybody. It's straight, right down the line.
I have two children. My son Ben is 10, and he's been coming here since he was 6. And my daughter Anna just turned 5. And when she was 4, she announced to us that Ben went to a school where he played all day, and she wanted to go to a teaching school. So in the fall, she's going to start at the public school down the street from our house. And I just wanted to tell you that and have you imagine for a minute that you were the parent of these two obviously very different children, and you've all said you would love to send your children to Sudbury Valley. What would you do in that situation? Would you honor the clear voice of your child, or would you say, oh no, Sudbury Valley is the place for everybody?
Absolutely. I would honor that request, and then they can see the difference and choose. It's a choice. My brother, who came here before I did, he had a little bit of public school, and he had a comparison. And when I started here, I didn't. And I wanted to, and I think I recall going for maybe a week and trying it out, and my mom wanted me to go or just wanted to try it because it was the curiosity was there. And I went, and I said, God, I don't like this. And I came back to Sudbury Valley, and I made the right choice, but without knowing, I wouldn't have known. So you need to honor that, and they'll choose for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree.
I agree with Amy, and a similar thing happened in my family. After I'd been here a while, my sister Kathy became a student and graduated. She went on to college and went off to fly airplanes and things, and works in the medical field. But my young brother, Sam, who was a great student here for one reason or another, wanted to go to the public school. He didn't turn out as good as us, but he's all right.
Before I ask my question, I just wanted to say how much I really enjoyed listening to all of you. It's been a really inspiring evening, and I wanted to thank you so much for coming and sharing your stories with us. My question is, our son came here for the first time last year, and although it took a lot of getting used to for my wife and me to get to just sort of accept the Sudbury Valley way as something that seemed right for us. One of the things that was helpful was that the school had a long history of success. Many graduates like yourselves, had gone off to lead very successful and interesting lives, and that was very reassuring for us. I'm thinking about your parents when you first came, when the school was brand new and the school had no track record, and I'm wondering if you feel that it took a great deal of courage on the part of your parents to have you come to the school, and if so, what was it that helped them to make their decisions?
Well, if I told you the story how my brother and I came to this school, you'd think it was really bizarre, seeing as though my brother and father were walking through the woods one day, and they stumbled upon this cave where there had been some Sudbury Valley students who were temporarily kicked out for, I don't know, some inappropriate behavior or another, and they expressed to my father and my brother what the school was all about, and my father had had an incident at the preschool that my brother was at and just felt that they weren't allowing him to be the kid that he needed to be, and were putting some strong restrictions on him. So, I don't know.
I can't believe how lucky I was, that my parents sent me to this school, because it's amazing, my hat's off to all of you. Even after the years of success the school has had, you want to do the best thing for your child, and this school is full of question marks, but so is any school. By being part of the crowd in the school that 99% of the kids go to, or should they be the percentile that comes to Sudbury Valley School? Similarly to Amy, my mother had a couple of Mexican standoffs with the school system where they just, girls must wear dresses to school. My mother would say, it's 0 degrees out there. I don't want Kathy standing at the bus stop in her little dress. This is back in the 60s, with the dress code. And they just, rules are rules are rules. It has to be this way. And this kind of thinking drove her crazy. And in my case, after a successful elementary school career where I was, a A and B student and the president of the school orchestra, all of a sudden in 7th grade, everything changed. All of a sudden, I was in an algebra class where after the first semester, I just didn't get it, and I was a failure all of a sudden. A big F. I am a failure? Oh no, I am no failure. My parents knew I was no failure, and the gall of these people to label me a failure. But it did psychological damage to me, still does. It makes me very upset that I was labeled a failure. And other things were happening. All of a sudden, we weren't throwing a beanbag around at gym. Suddenly it was the football, the baseball. For all my gifts or whatever talent I may possess with the music or the art or whatever, I was never a sports person. And I grew up in the woods chopping down trees with my old man. We never threw a softball around, and all of a sudden, I was the last one to get picked on the teams because I didn't know the rules to these games, and then we all had to hit the showers and jock straps and pep rallies and all this, and I was like, let me out of here. This is when the walls came crashing down on me, and so my dad was, he did it, so you can do it too, kind of attitude. But in the family, my dad was in charge of the business, my mother was in charge of the kids. And my mother said, Bill, I think it'd be a good idea to let Mark try this out. Now when I'm with my dad, he can't stop saying how, it was great that he followed her instincts, and we all did, because it was the greatest thing that ever could have happened to me, and he was really worried what direction I could have gone. And the funny thing is, it was here at Sudbury Valley after my thing about sports. Some kids are slow to learn to read. Well, sports was something I was never interested in, but by the last couple of years, I joined in with the sports here. It was with the little 5- and 6-year-olds and the girls, but I did learn to throw a ball, and I finally got to beat somebody.
I think that it does. I think that it does take a certain amount of courage for parents. I do think that they have to have a certain kind of trust in this place and in their kids. And I think particularly, in '68, when my parents, I think, it took courage and faith and trust, and also knowing their kid. Just that if you're communicating with your kids, then you're going to have a sense of how things are going. And but I do think it takes courage, and I think it takes courage for the kids too. It's not an easy place. Even though it looks that things seem to be going easy is to take some courage every time you open a door and risk just sort of, encountering new people or new experiences there. I mean, all that takes a lot of courage. Yeah.
It sounds as though, for the most part, your parents were pretty supportive of the school, but I wonder if you knew kids when you were here whose parents were, despite sending them here, very skeptical and critical, and could talk a little bit, if you knew kids like that, what it was like for the kids to be here and have a lot of criticism of the school at home.
I mean, I think it's probably. I'm trying to think if I knew someone, specifically. But, I mean, I think what you could sort of say is that they're probably pretty split, and that it's probably very difficult. That it puts them in a difficult position.
Yeah, I agree with Laura. I don't know how I could. I was fortunate, so I can't comment on those people if there were. But I think everybody at any given time questions things, and that's sort of what evolving and becoming a person is all about. So I think there are definitely those questions come and go with parents. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't have a really good example to pull out. People ask me about, do some kids have to have tutoring on the side when they go back home? And I know some kids have and still do. But, to a point, the parents know best. And something, kids can roll with things. And there were cases where suddenly a student would disappear, and we'd just assume the mother or father must have got cold feet and pulled them out. But if a kid is not, sometimes you're just putting words escape me, but at this school you deal with it honestly and out front. If your kid is screwing around or not doing anything, it's right there for everybody to see, and you deal with it or don't deal with it if that problem was to come up. In high school, so the kid screws around, so they send him to a study hall, and he bothers somebody else's kid, your kid who's trying to learn, and they pump them through the system and make taxpayers out of them, spit them out, or whatever they end up as. And, I just see a lot of the kids that I went to school with here I've met up in later life. That little nerd I was telling you about with the rockets and the schematic was out on the road with me for 7 years running sound and lights for my band. I've had other people in Sudbury Valley that I've met up with in recording studios and around the country, and had dealings with these people, and it's that's totally another subject.
Mark mentioned the F word, failure, and I've noticed in all of you in your career choices were willing to take risks, it seemed to me at least, and I wondered if you would address their Sudbury Valley experience and how it helped you in terms of career choices, whether you felt you were going to fail at something, or it even occurred to you to think about that, or you went through lots of different ideas of I'll do this, 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 or this, or whether you just had some clear sense of direction in your career choices.
Well, I think my experience at Sudbury Valley was not to understand what it would be to fail, or actually to sort of accept that there are things you can fail at, and you just try again at something else. So that's sort of a non-word for me. I don't understand what failure means because it's not been my experience. Yes, I can fail. I can fail tying my shoes, but I'll wear another pair. It's okay, and to acknowledge that it's okay to fail at something. What's perfection? What is failure? I don't know. I'm not. I don't think so. I think anyone can just do different things.
Having that A, B, C, D, or fail thing eliminated allows people a lot more courage to to try to do something and get better. I mean, I've been visiting the school a lot lately, and in fact, I'm going to be running for a staff position here at the end of the year. I've been playing music with the kids, and if I was a school teacher, I'd be giving some of them a D or a fail mark every day, because, you know, they're awful. But they keep coming back, and they sit down, and they tune their instruments, and they work on it, and when I finish, they say, "Can I stay on and play some more?" And I come back I go down and do some artwork. I come back 45 minutes later, and they're still, sounds like hell, but they're working on it. And this is giving, you know, not having those letters come down on you too early that, you know, and, you know, I got an A and you got a B, so I'm better than you, or whatever. There's that, eliminating that and just getting down to the pure, if you want to work on something, you can get better at it. You know, because I'm no great Caruso or anything as a singer, but I went out and cut records and did things. People paid to come see me, and I wrote songs and ended up working with the people I used to listen to their records down in the smoking room. Just because, and when I was in Holliston High School, when I went out for the music course in 8th grade, they made us all line up and sing, and somebody went by and listened to me sing, "Oh, beautiful," and said, "Forget it, you don't make the grade." I was cut out of music as an elective for that whole year. Went on to make my living 15 years singing. And so, what does it tell you?
When I think of, you know, what it meant not to get grades here, I think that sort of eliminating that as a point of reference, then it brings you, then you sort of, okay, well, you do things as well as that you feel that you should do them, and that's usually, you know, generally pretty well. I mean, that you can, if you work hard at something, and I think that's, you know, been the same in terms of, you know, my experience working and in school, that I usually, you know, set the standards. You know, what do I want to learn? What do I want to get out of this? And what am I satisfied with? And it, you know, usually works out. Sometimes, you know, you might actually, you know, run into a difference of opinion with someone, and I think that and at those moments, then you actually do sort of realize what the school, you know, where you can kind of say, well, you know, you might not think that this, you know, is the way that you see it, but for these reasons, you know, then I'll stand behind it. So it does, I think, you know, give you just I think I would describe it as a kind of a centeredness or something in what you're doing, and which is a good thing, and it gets you, you know, I think it gets you far.
I imagine it could work the other way, too. If you're Little Miss Straight A student in high school, I don't have a care in the world. I'm getting straight A's. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to make lots of money, and I'm going to be happy, and everything's going to be great. And some people, you know, get that mixed up, that an abundance of money is going to make them a great person and everything's going to be great. But we've all heard the stories about, why in the world did this happen? He had it all. You know, it happens all the time. The school scrapes away all that superfluous. You really find out who you are and who the people you're dealing with. It's a very truthful place.
I have one question, although it's probably very obvious. Do you enjoy going to school here? Was it fun to go to school here? And did you ever wish you had not? I mean, did you ever say, geez, I really wish I had gone to regular school? Not that this isn't regular school. I think it's regular school.
I think always the curiosity on the other side is curiosity. You want to know. I think you question that in yourself, what you want to do. Looking back on Sudbury Valley, I would never have gone anywhere else. I feel like one of the most selfish people in the world for being a part of this place. I have wonderful friends here. I have wonderful feelings. I have wonderful emotions here, and I learned a lot here. No, I wouldn't have gone anywhere else. And I was very happy here. I loved coming here. It gave me a thought of education. You know, when I was talking about when I went to college and I couldn't understand the mentality of getting an A or getting a B, or, you know, if we weed out this information, this is what the teacher's looking for, this is what they want. I couldn't understand that because I wanted to absorb it all. Because that's what I was doing here at Sudbury Valley, was absorbing anything and everything and from whomever. And that's what changed for me in the outside world, and that's the part of Sudbury Valley that I'm so happy that I have, because I went to college and you're a bunch of jokes. You know, you're just picking out these little pieces. I want to know it all. So I wouldn't have gone anywhere else. Mm-mm.
I had lots of fun, and I never really, you know, wished I had gone someplace else. But it's also, you know, I mean, you go through adolescence. That's not always fun. I mean, so it's not all like I can look back and say, yes, it was all this, you know, wonderful, fantastic thing. I mean, there also are certain kinds of struggles. But would I have, you know, no, I mean, I don't. And I think that the kinds of long-term, you know, connections that I have with this place and the people who are here, you know, definitely, you know, mean so much.
I know you
Possibly
would have.
I would have
Yes.
traded one thing. I would have traded possibly my SBS for the one now with this barn heated now, because we used to be up here playing our guitars in the cold because we got run off from the main building, with the new music rooms, with the computer, and now with the proposed new building where we can bring in a couple more kids and more people, because that was our problem when we would sit around. The guys, the 16-year-old guys, always wished there was a few more 16-year-old girls and a few more 16-year-old guys so we could get a whole team together, or another drummer or another bass player or another guy that had a car or something that would add to the circle of resources. And I'm sure all the age groups have thought the same thing too, or at least when they get to the age where they start thinking about those kind of things, that the more we reflect the world outside, the more the school rises up. And it's so much like, it's a protected version of the outside world, but so much the way we incorporate, the way we have our meeting every week, the way everybody has a voice if they choose to, or can leave it to somebody else if they don't choose to. And, you know, the Robert's Rules of Order that we take for granted, but when you go out into the big world and you hear these things again, you say, gee, that's all stuff we did at Sudbury Valley School. And the stepping out of this place into the real world is such an effortless step, I think, for most of us.
I see fewer parents attending assembly meetings now than 7 years ago when I first came to the school. And I'm curious to know, back when you were here, that's true for students also. Did students and parents typically attend the scheduled assembly meetings, the special meetings that were called, or?
I don't recall my mom attending. But I think she was probably working. I think some of the kids who came, we used to go and hang around, but I don't remember a difference. I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to, I think even back then it was hard to, sometimes you never knew when we had to cut down a big tree along because of Dutch elm disease. That might draw a big crowd, and then having a meeting on, is the school going to close? Nobody shows up. So you just can't figure it out. But I think we all try to make the meetings just like we try to make the town meetings and vote for the president. But I think the nice thing in this school is, the more you do come to these meetings, you realize that it's not everybody against me. It's not like everybody has a different idea. Occasionally we have a different, but there's a lot of open-minded, well-thought-out expressions of opinion, and I mean, I've been a public member of the assembly for many years now, and when I was working as a chef, a lot of times I just couldn't drag my tired old bones down here, but I knew, as I reviewed the line items and all, and then I looked at who the trustees and who else was going to be at the meeting or probably would be there, I felt secure that, there was some good people there. Same way you feel sometimes if you got the flu and you can't go vote for the president or something, but you know that the neighborhood is going to go the right way, or sometimes you can't make it, but you have to have that trust. So, and I feel a lot more trust within Sudbury Valley than I do make my presidential election a lot more than, but Sudbury Valley, things usually go the right way here, to my way of thinking.
I don't know. I don't really remember. I mean, I couldn't make a comparison between how the attendance in assembly meetings.
Okay, I have a question. I'm not exactly sure how to put it, but I have two sons that come here. And I've noticed that being in an environment, you're going to have to excuse me, my voice always shakes when I first start talking openly, but being in an environment where no one's managing your time, telling you who you are, or, trying to coerce you into any direction, I can see how for them it's really, they're blossoming. They're getting in touch with who they are, they're getting really happy, and they're knowing that they're empowered in their life. So the other side that's come up for I hate how my voice shakes. It's embarrassing. But the other side that's come up for my youngest son is that it also, I think, because you're in touch with yourself, or at least for him, there's a lot of his own fears about life that he's in touch with, like approaching a staff member with a request, or, being able to deal with things that come up with other kids that, he's not sure what to do with because he's not the kind of kid that'll bring people up easily, or, and I'm be curious if you have memories of where, your whole person came up, the happy sides, but what about, were there struggles, or were there things that you found you had to face that were fearful to you in, in social, in just life? Because like you said, it's life. It's being in life because you're dealing with yourself, with human beings all the time, every day. You're not being managed through your day. So you're dealing with all the issues that come up with life for adults, but as children in the world here. And I'm just curious if you have any memories that you would be willing to share of those kinds of things.
I don't have any, I can't recall right now any specific memories, but I'd like to sort of comment on what you're saying in that regard. I think being able to be at Sudbury Valley and having the ability to be your own person and to have all of this come up and have such wonderful, nurturing, functional people around you to sort of work with you on those, it's wonderful because there's so many different perspectives. There's all the staff who are here, as well as the other children that you're with, or the older children and the younger children. You're taking all of that in and you're learning from that, and you're just allowed to use that in a good way. I think, and in today's work that I do, being a social worker, I see these kids struggling with these issues in contained environments, in public schools, and even in more advanced hospital settings or residential programs where these things come up for them anyhow, and they don't have people dealing with them the same way as it's dealt with here, because they're being told that they need to step on those feelings and not have them come out right now because we're going to deal with this part. And I think that's sort of what happens in some of the public school environments is their personalities are being suppressed, and because the education is being put upon them. So it's you got to find a happy medium, and that's what I think I received here, or what I see here.
Yeah, the school really, it offers so many different ways for a lot of us are shy or don't know how to deal with other people. And that's one of the kids that, when I visit here, he kind of was a tag-along guy with some of the more vocal kids his own age. He wouldn't say a word to me. I thought he was a little mute. I didn't know. He's just real quiet. But he got a little guitar, and he'd come up and play, but sit in the back and not say anything. We didn't put any pressures on him whatsoever, and he just kind of strummed along and did his thing. And then as the days progressed, he started moving closer to the front of the bunch of us. There's 6 or 7 of us playing. Pretty soon he was moving right up to the microphone, and then next thing I knew, he was starting to sing into the microphone just because of that lack of pressure. And for most, you read these stories about talking into a microphone is the biggest fear of most people, and here's this little guy who had nothing to say, and all of a sudden he's on the microphone wailing away like Mick Jagger, and it was a nice way to see a guy come out of his shell, and he certainly feels more comfortable around myself and the guys, and it goes. I remember myself when I first came to the school, I was in awe of a lot of the big kids sitting around the school who had their act together. They were really cool. They had long hair and the thing, and the girls, and I'm there I didn't have it together at all. So I went into the art room and I drew a little comic book. It's in the first few days I was here, with a little rat character who was like an anti-authoritarian character, and I can't remember, he had an adventure. Anyway, I wrote this thing out, and then I left it out in one of the tables where I thought it might be seen, and sure enough, after a while, I heard kids saying, "Hey, did you see that Rat Man comic? Well, that's really cool." And the big kids, the kids they're looking, "Oh, this is a riot," and they're laughing. "Who did this thing anyway?" And then little Mark comes out of the Trojan horse. "I wrote that comic. You want to see the new one?" And this is the kind of thing in public school or in many kind of schools, if you don't, you just sit there in your chair, you keep your mouth shut, and you listen to somebody that knows what you should be hearing about, and you don't have that unless you're a great athlete or a really cute cheerleader or something that fits into that. If you're just a nerdy little guy that doesn't have it together and is really shy, it's hard to make your mark. This is a school where you can make your mark in different ways. Make a really good apple pie, or write a funny comic strip, or take pictures of rocket ships as they re-enter the Earth's atmosphere, or whatever it is, and become known around the school as this guy, and have some respect.
I think it's a tough thing to answer, because I think from my own experience that there are always moments of being, sort of, maybe that you were fearful that you could approach someone or ask someone something, but what I experienced is that it's a very safe place, and that if you do, in a sense, take that risk, or that kids, when they do take that risk, that they'll be met, and that and that there is a sense of trust and in the community and among the staff, and so.
It's funny listening to Amy and Laura talk, because we saw each other and went to school in overlapping times, but everybody gets their own thing out of this school in such different ways. You all come out in your own direction, but I've seen kids come out and go in a very preppy type of way, and seen kids go off a hike up in Maine, and we've never seen them again, and change their name. It's fantastic, and when I get together, some of them go into the armed services, some of them, it's just in every kind of direction, yet there's this one bonding thing that makes us happy to see each other when we get together again. But it's amazing what the totally different kind of people that come out of this place.
Well, I think it's getting kind of late. If anybody else has anything, I don't want to cut them off, but